What's up, family? Welcome back to Konvos with Cam. So happy that you are able to stop by briefly this morning and just check this quick convo out, right? So, yesterday we started speaking about depression and the depressive symptoms that we may read about, the list we may see, um, or even just it as a buzzword, you know. Um, but we wanted to take a deeper dive into that, right? So prior to even giving someone the diagnosis of depression, I want to first, say, is it possibly something going on medically? So what a lot of people don't know is that that is what we do. We always want to rule out anything medical because depression can show up and the symptoms themselves can show up, and someone may have thyroid, chemical imbalances just may be off. Um, it could be, dementia for some individuals. So it's a lot of medical things that it could possibly be that we need to rule out first, right? I often talk about the DSM, right? And how it requires us to really look into the symptoms that someone's reporting and see how long it's been going on. Now, if we're just talking about depression disorder, um, we're looking at someone having at least one or two symptoms that may have occurred over a period of 2 weeks, and then they must have five symptoms out of that long list, right? And so it's not like I've always said, it's easy to receive a diagnosis as people would think. Some people just think if I go in there and I say, I've been sad, I've been going through this, I've been going through that, then, oh, you're depressed. Well, being depressed does not actually equate to having depression, if you will. So, some of the two symptoms that one, like we said, must at least be present would be that emptiness, that hopelessness, right? Or, like we talked about yesterday, that anhedonia, where the person just has lost interest and even pleasure in the activities that they once enjoyed. So, they must meet one of those core symptoms, is what the DSM calls it. At least one of those things must be present for at least 2 weeks consecutively. Okay. And then, of course, like I said, then it's five other symptoms that we want to see um, in order to make that diagnosis, whether it be trouble with sleeping, maybe having some psychomotor agitation, restlessness, slowness. What about fatigue? For some, it may be the inability to concentrate, right? And then we talked about yesterday, even appetite. Did that change? Um, has there been any significant loss of weight, or maybe a gain that seemed like it just came from nowhere, right? Um, or it could be at the very end of that spectrum where someone may be having thoughts of suicidality. And so those are just, the biggest things that we look at in the DSM 5. But then let's go back for those of us who may just have days where we have depressive symptoms. Now, if it's someone who is seemingly typically balanced, typically just, hey, they're cool, they're chill, right? They might feel meh, right? But it doesn't mean that this lowness, this low mood, if you will, is ongoing. Okay. So then that individual, we would say they are just having an adjustment, mood, an adjustment disorder. because it's just a temporary. It's something, a situation, a circumstance that has disrupted their day to day, you know, and it's just they're having a hard time adjusting, right? It's definitely not a diagnosis that's going to stick with anybody because that's the purpose of that diagnosis. It just means it's temporary. And so when they stabilize, when they come to the crisis stabilization unit, the biggest thing we're trying to do is help them find coping skills, techniques that they can better navigate when and if they have a situation like they're currently dealing with has arisen, right? Okay. So yesterday we even spoke about the feeling of being stuck in that low mood, just almost like your feet are in cement, or it could be like sinking, like in sand, just sinking, you're stuck. The weight of whatever the problem is, it seems like it's just holding you back and you can't get past it. Mindfulness can help us, yes. But then you may say, Cam, but I'm not even motivated to do the things that I once enjoyed. I don't want to do that, right? It seems like a job. It seems like too much of a chore. It seems too overwhelming to have to even think about doing the things I used to enjoy. Okay, so let's scratch that because what I've always said is even if one technique or skill does not help, oh, there's a ton more, right? So then we move on and we say, all right, is this the first time I felt this way? Because when we're stuck in that low mood, in that state of this depressive symptom, we tend to forget about all the other times because surely this is not the first time in life that you've had a low mood. Sometimes it can feel like this is the worst time, but if we are careful to reflect, nah, we've been here before. And so we sometimes call it, the word is losing. Like, I can't find it right now. I'm trying to think of it. Man, float back. There we go. And it's when we float back to all those times mentally, we want to float back to all those times that we have thought in the moment that it was the worst, only for us to come out on the other side. So that can also be helpful, when feeling stuck, is to have that reflective period of, I've been here before. Okay, okay. I might have just got a little ahead of myself. I might have started catastrophizing a bit much. Um, all right, let me push on. Ah, now, say for instance, if that does not work, then what can? Right? What do I need to do then? Well, like I've always said, I don't give advice. No, I'm just going to do my best to help you help yourself in order to just achieve a better quality of life where you can successfully navigate, right? So, what if those other two things we just discussed don't help? The mindfulness didn't help, the float back didn't help. Yeah, reflecting on our past experiences, it did not help. So, then what? Distraction can be quite helpful. Yeah, distraction techniques, whether it be calling a friend, whether it be just going out for a drive, something to disrupt the pattern of ruminating in the depressive thought, if that makes sense. Oh, I'm surprised. I actually forgot to cut my ringer down. Anyway, so all those things can help as well. And some of you may have tried that before. You ever had a conflict with someone and you say, you know what, let's just stop right now. I'm just going to take a quick drive, because that time can disrupt whatever the overwhelming feeling that you're having. And it may give you some time to process a little bit. Now, what if you really become stuck, even mentally, in that depressive symptom? What happens? What do you do then? If anything begins to disrupt and cause such a disturbance in your ability to function and disrupts your executive functioning, get help. Yeah. We don't want to stay there too long. It's one thing to have a low mood. It's one thing to have moments. For some, even the seasons changing can, you know, increase depressive symptoms. Doesn't mean they suffer from depression. They don't have a diagnosis, but their mood can, change. If this goes on, y'all have heard what I said. Hell, for someone having all those things consistently for 2 weeks, we would make the claim, as long as we ruled out anything medically, that they are suffering from depression. So if you're starting to see that in your day to day and it's becoming ongoing, and you're seeing some of these symptoms that we spoke of yesterday, you may be seeing the inability to care for self, the inability to make decisions, almost like a carelessness, a hopelessness, the feelings of worthlessness, some level of guilt, shame, whatever it is, get help. There's nothing wrong with that. So, like I said, I just wanted to have a quick convo. Went a little longer than I had originally planned, but I look forward to your feedback. As always, I look forward to your questions. And we're all doing this thing called life for the very first time. Be gentle with yourselves, all right? And if you feel the need to donate, um, I definitely thank you in advance for contributing. I thank you in advance for hitting that like button. I thank you in advance for sharing the video. Blessings to you always. Until next time.